Out there, in the quiet, past the highways and headlights, where the trees grow thick and the night feels heavier than it should. Some folks come back with stories that shouldn't be. These are 4 of those stories. 4 forests, each one different. When the woods go silent, don't move, don't breathe, and never stay too long. Welcome to Weird Encounters, a place where the ordinary fades into shadow and the unexplainable comes alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and become part of our ever-growing community of the curious. In the deep forests of Washington, silence can mean safety, or it can mean something is waiting. One man wanted peace and quiet, but what he got was a visitor who preferred the dark and a knife that gleamed when the lights went out. If you've ever experienced something as creepy as this, let me know in the comments section. I'm writing because I don't know what else to do with this. It's been 6 months and I still can't sleep right. I thought maybe putting it into words and sending it somewhere would help. I live just outside Quinault, Washington, on the edge of the Olympic National Forest. My place is a 1-story cabin my ex-wife and I bought before the divorce. She got the city, I got the quiet. I used to think I liked it that way. The property sits off South Shore Road, about 3 miles from the Quinault Ranger Station. No neighbors close enough to see through the trees. You get used to the rain out here, the smell of wet cedar and mud. Nights are black. No streetlights, just the forest pressing in. It started in February. Wind had been bad all week, branches breaking. That night, I was half asleep when something tapped on the side window over my bed. Just 2 dull knocks. I figured a limb had blown loose and was swinging against the glass. Next morning, I went out with a flashlight. No branch, no marks. Snow still on the ground, but nothing right under the window. Next night, around 1 a.m., it happened again. Same window. 3 knocks this time, slow, like someone testing how much noise they could make. I sat up in bed and just listened. Couldn't see out. The porch light doesn't reach that far. After a while, I convinced myself it was an animal and forced myself back to sleep. 2 days later, the power went out from wind. I went outside to start the generator and saw prints in the snow leading from the tree line toward the house. Bare feet, each one longer than mine, deep in the crust. They stopped beneath my bedroom window, then turned back into the woods. I called my buddy Dave in Hoquiam. He's a hunter. He said maybe a drifter, maybe someone high-walking barefoot. Told me to lock my doors. I did. That night I slept with the rifle leaned against the bed. I woke up around 3 a.m. because my dog Rex was growling low. He never does that. I looked toward the living room window, moonlight through the curtain, and saw a shape standing outside. Tall, shoulders hunched forward, like it had to bend to look in. Then the curtain moved. Something pressed its face against the glass. I froze. The outline of the head looked wrong, too long. The eyes looked like empty holes, darker than the night behind it. And in one hand, I swear to God, was a long kitchen knife. The reflection caught just enough light to glint once. Rex barked and the shape jerked away. I heard footsteps across the deck boards, slow, heavy, and then nothing but the rain on the roof. I called the sheriff's office. Deputy Markham came out next morning. He walked the property with me. By then, the rain had turned everything to mud, but he did see where something heavy had stood under the living room window. Big shoeless impressions again. He said maybe a bear stood on its hind legs. I asked him if bears carried knives. He didn't laugh, just told me to keep lights on outside. I went to the hardware store in Amanda Park and bought 2 floodlights and a motion sensor, hooked them up that afternoon. That night, around midnight, the lights triggered. I grabbed the rifle and looked out through the kitchen door window. The yard was empty, but the sensor kept clicking on and off, like something moved just past its reach. Every few seconds, dark, then light. Then the back door handle rattled. Once, twice, like someone testing the lock. I shouted, "Get the hell out of here," and pumped the shotgun. The handle went still. After about a minute, the floodlight clicked off again, and the woods went black. I didn't sleep. For 3 days, nothing happened. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Then on Sunday, just after sunset, I heard scratching under the floorboards. Slow drag, then stop, like nails pulling along the wood from one end of the crawl space to the other. Rex barked until he choked. I called Dave. He drove up next morning with his .45 and a flashlight. We pulled the access hatch under the porch. Mud, rocks, old insulation, but in the middle, clear as day, a pile of small animal bones stacked in a pyramid. Mouse skulls, bird bones, some I didn't recognize. On top of the pile was my missing hunting knife, the one I keep in the kitchen drawer. We burned everything in the fire pit and left the light on all day. That night I sat in the living room watching TV, rifle across my lap. Around 2 a.m., the power flickered, screen went black, and I heard the motion sensor click. Light flooded the yard. Through the side window I saw it again, standing right at the tree line. Pale skin stretched tight, ribs showing, long black hair hanging in strings over its face. It was holding something in each hand. One was definitely a knife. The other looked like an animal head. It didn't move, just stared toward the house. I aimed the rifle but couldn't keep my hand steady. Then the light timed out and went off. Darkness. I tried to reset the switch, but before I could, I heard breathing, outside the wall behind me. Heavy, wet, close. Then a tap on the glass, right beside my head. I fired through the curtain. The blast blew out the window and knocked me over. When I looked up, nothing was there, just the cold wind blowing snow inside. Deputy Markham came again with another officer. They searched the property till sunrise. Found no tracks, no blood, no sign anyone had been out there. Said it was probably a prowler scared off by the shot. I stayed with Dave for a week after that. When I came back, one of the floodlights had been unscrewed and laid face down in the mud. A week later, I put the cabin up for sale. It's still sitting empty. When I picked up the last of my stuff, I went into the crawl space one more time. There were new prints in the dirt, same bare feet, deep and wide. They led from the hatch straight toward where my bed had been, and stopped. I locked up and left everything inside. If someone buys that place, I hope they replace the windows. The glass felt thin, like paper, by the end. I still see it sometimes in my sleep. Those pits where eyes should have been, staring up through the window glass, rain running down its face. Deep in the Ozarks, the trees have eyes, and the ground hides what people leave behind. A hunter went looking for game, but instead he found a feral clan that hunts intruders. This is his encounter. Hi, I wasn't going to send this, but after what I saw, I can't keep it bottled up. My name's Jason Hollis. I'm from Clarksville, Arkansas. I've hunted these woods my whole life. Never been scared of anything out there. Not bears, not hogs, not even the storms that rip the trees down. But after what I saw in the Ozarks off Highway 123, I don't think I'll ever go back. It started early November. I went alone because my cousin backed out last minute. I was about an hour north of Dover, off a dirt service road near Haw Creek Falls. There's a trail not many people use. It's steep and rough, but it leads to a clearing by the creek where I've hunted deer for years. Weather was cold and still. No wind. I parked the truck, loaded my pack, and hiked in a couple miles. Made camp around 3 in the afternoon. Simple tent, small fire ring, hung some food in a bag away from the tent. By sunset, I'd already felt something off. The woods were dead quiet. Not even frogs or owls. That's strange for that area. Usually you hear something. When I woke up at dawn, there was a smell I can only describe as rot. Like roadkill left in the sun too long, but thicker, heavier in the air. I figured maybe a dead deer nearby. I followed the scent down toward the creek. About 50 yards from camp, I found a small animal skull wedged in a tree fork. Looked like a raccoon's maybe, but clean. Too clean. No flesh left, just bleached white and wired to the bark with twisted vines. Beneath it were bones laid out in rows, maybe 20 of them, like someone had been arranging them. I turned back to camp right away. Later that afternoon, I hiked deeper upriver to scout. That's when I saw smoke through the trees, just a thin gray line rising near the ridge. I thought maybe someone else camping or poaching. When I got close, I saw what looked like an old hunting shack, half fallen in, wood blackened by weather. But smoke was coming from a metal barrel out front. I called out. No answer. The smell hit me before I reached the door. It was worse than anything I've ever smelled, sweet and rotting and chemical at the same time. Inside was a mess. Animal hides nailed to the walls, meat hanging from wire hooks, buckets full of dark liquid. On a table, jars with things floating inside, some kind of organs. And on the floor, what looked like clothing ripped to pieces, jeans, a kid's shoe, something like hair tangled in the corner. I backed out fast. That's when I heard movement behind the shack. It came out from the trees crawling on all fours, then stood upright. I thought it was a man at first, but the shape was wrong. Its legs bowed out, its skin gray like clay smeared over flesh. Long arms that hung almost to its knees. Face sunken in, teeth black and sharp. It made a noise, kind of a wheeze and a growl mixed together. I froze. It sniffed the air and turned its head toward me. The smell got so strong I gagged. Then two more stepped out behind it. Smaller, one dragging its hand like it was broken. Their eyes looked clouded, milky. I ran. I didn't even look back until I hit the creek. When I did, I saw one of them standing on the ridge above, watching. Not chasing, just watching. I should have left right then, but my truck was 2 miles back through thick brush, and dark was coming. I figured I'd pack up at first light. That night, I didn't build a fire. I sat in the tent with my rifle loaded. Around midnight, I heard something move outside, slow footsteps circling. Then the smell hit again. I looked through the zipper gap. I could see shadows moving around the trees, 2, maybe 3 figures. One stopped at my food bag hanging on the line. It sniffed it, then tore it down in one pull. The bag ripped open, jerky, coffee, all gone. Then I heard a voice, a whisper. It sounded like a kid saying, "Mama." I thought I was losing my mind. Something brushed against the side of the tent, sliding a hand down the nylon. I saw the outline of fingers, long and thin. Then nails dragged across the fabric. I fired a shot through the wall and heard something scream, not human, high-pitched and furious. Everything went quiet after that. At dawn, I packed and moved fast. No breakfast, no coffee. I just wanted out. But halfway to the truck, I smelled it again, stronger than before. The trail opened into a hollow where a big oak had fallen. Under the trunk, I saw something pale. It was a person, a man, maybe a hiker or hunter. Skin gray, chest torn open, ribs cracked outward, flies everywhere. Behind him, 3 more shapes, what was left of them. They'd been there a while, half buried in leaves. I saw another skeleton wired up with vines, just like the skull I'd seen before. That's when I heard voices again, soft, whispering from the trees. I looked up and saw movement all around, faces in the shadows, at least a dozen. Some crouched on branches, some standing half naked in the brush, all filthy, covered in sores and scars. Their teeth were sharp, like filed down. A few held bones, or tools made from metal scraps. One of them had what looked like part of a jawbone tied to its neck. I ran for my life. I didn't stop until I hit the road and saw my truck through the trees. Something followed me the whole way. I could hear snapping branches, grunts, and screams. I jumped in, started the engine, and drove until I hit Dover. I went straight to the sheriff's office. They sent deputies up there 2 days later. Said they didn't find anything. No bones, no bodies. Said maybe I got turned around and found an old trapping site. They thought I was drunk or seeing things. I haven't been back, but my cousin said he went turkey hunting near Haw Creek, said he found a pile of bones arranged in a circle. He thought it was weird but figured coyotes or kids messing around. After I told him what I saw, he was seriously freaked out. What I remember the most was the smell. That smell doesn't leave you. It gets in your nose, your clothes, your hair. Sometimes I swear I still smell it driving past the woods at night. Whatever they are, those things, they're still out there. I don't think they're animals. I think they're what happens when people get lost and never come back. If you ever go out past the service roads up by Haw Creek Falls and you smell something like rot before you see anything, leave. They say curiosity killed the cat, but sometimes it just peels back the skin. A woman went looking for proof of reptilians and found a truth that sheds its disguise only when it's ready to feed. My name's Sarah Belden. I've followed your channel for a while, and I don't care if you believe me or not, but I need to tell someone. Something happened to me last summer out in Nevada, and I don't think it was a dream or a psychotic break. I've always been into weird stuff, aliens, government labs, all of that. I used to laugh at the reptilian crowd online, the people who think politicians are shapeshifters. But then I found a small group on a conspiracy forum that sounded different. They didn't talk about lizard people in politics. They said they were the descendants of something made in a government facility in northern Nevada. They said they lived off the grid near the Jarbidge Wilderness and wanted to meet others who believed. I joined one of their threads, mostly curious. They were convincing, calm, scientific, not ranting like usual conspiracy nuts. A man named Elias invited me to a meetup. Said they were doing a field investigation at an abandoned government site. I hesitated, but they seemed organized. Maps, GPS coordinates, satellite photos. Against my better judgment, I said yes. We met in a gas station parking lot outside Elko. There were 5 of them. Elias, a woman named Nora, a quiet guy who went by Vance, and 2 younger ones, Trent and Mira. They looked normal, jeans, hiking gear, like any group of backpackers. We caravanned north on State Route 225, then turned onto a long dirt road heading toward the Jarbidge Mountains. No cell service for miles. They said we'd be hiking to an old research outpost that hadn't been used since the 1970s. We parked around dusk and set up tents near a dry wash. They lit a small campfire and passed around tea that smelled like metal and herbs. Elias did most of the talking. Said the government used the site for biological advancement, genetic experiments meant to adapt humans for extreme climates. Claimed the reptilian stories came from the few test subjects who escaped when funding was cut. I laughed, thinking it was just an elaborate role play. But none of them laughed back. That night I woke up to whispering outside my tent. I thought it was wind at first, but the voices were too clear. I heard Nora saying my name, soft but close. Sarah, come look. I unzipped the tent. The campfire was still glowing low. Everyone was asleep except her. She stood near the wash, staring at something beyond the tree line. I asked what she was looking at. She said, "They're waiting for us." Before I could ask who, she smiled, too wide, and walked back into the dark. When morning came, her tent was empty. Elias said she'd gone ahead to check the trail. He didn't seem worried. We hiked most of that day. No one talked much. Late afternoon, we reached a fenced-off area buried in the woods. The fence was rusted, topped with twisted barbed wire. A faded sign hung crooked on the gate. U.S. Biological Research, restricted access. Inside were concrete buildings half collapsed, with old power lines sagging over them. Elias said this was Site 9. He walked like he'd been there before. They pried open one of the doors with a crowbar. The air inside was cold and smelled like old metal and mold. We used headlamps to go in. The walls were painted hospital green, peeling everywhere. A hallway led to a big chamber with tables bolted to the floor, straps still attached. On the walls were scratched words, some in English, some in symbols I didn't recognize. Mira ran her hand over one and said, "This is where they learn to shed." The sound of that word, shed, made my stomach drop. Elias told me to follow him deeper inside. The others stayed behind, whispering. There was a stairwell leading down to a lower level. My flashlight flickered as we went. The walls were damp, the steps slick with rust. At the bottom was another door, this one sealed with a chain. Elias broke it. Inside was a tunnel lined with pipes and vents. Along one wall, glass tanks, some shattered, some still filled with cloudy liquid. Inside one, I swear I saw something floating. A shape like a human body, but wrong. Limbs too long, skin tinted greenish gray, the face smooth where eyes should have been. I stumbled back, and Elias grabbed my arm hard. His hand felt hot, hotter than it should have. He said, "This is what we were before." His pupils looked thin and vertical like a snake's. I thought it was my flashlight reflection until he blinked sideways, like a second eyelid moved across. I screamed and ran. I found the others in the main room. They were standing in a circle, all looking at me. Their skin looked damp, shiny under the lights. Trent was pulling something off his neck. Skin. He peeled it downward like it was a glove, revealing scales underneath. Mira was whispering words that didn't sound human. I tried to run for the door, but Vance blocked it. He smiled, teeth too sharp, and said, "You came to see the truth. Now you're part of it." Elias came up behind me, holding something metal, a syringe the size of a screwdriver. He said, "They built us to blend in, to watch, to wait." He raised the syringe. I swung my flashlight and hit him hard across the face. His skin split, not bleeding red, but thick yellow fluid poured out. He hissed like air escaping from a tire. I shoved past and ran out the door, up the stairs, through the fence. I didn't stop running until my legs gave out. 3 days later, a rancher found me wandering on a dirt road, dehydrated and barefoot. Sheriff's deputies took me to Elko General. They said I'd been missing 6 days. They searched the coordinates I gave them, said they found nothing, no buildings, no fence, no signs of a camp. Said the area had burned in a wildfire years ago. When I told them about the tanks, the syringe, and the eyes, the doctor wrote acute stress reaction with hallucination. They gave me fluids and released me the next day. I moved back to Utah with my sister, tried to get help. The nightmares come every few nights. In them, I'm still in that tunnel. The glass tanks are humming, and something inside them moves. A week ago, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo of me standing at the Elko gas station the day I met them. On the back, written in ink that shimmered green under light, were 2 words, "We're not done." I burned it, but the smell wouldn't go away. Sometimes when I shower, my skin feels different, like it's too tight, like something underneath wants out. The cabin my uncle left me isn't empty. Hi, my name's Aaron Wells. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm writing because I need someone to hear this before I decide what to do next. Last year, my uncle passed away and left me his cabin near Tellico Plains, right at the edge of the Cherokee National Forest. He built it back in the 70s. No electricity, no plumbing, just a wood stove and a well. I didn't even know he still had it. He lived out there alone for the last 5 years of his life, and the family barely heard from him. The sheriff said he died of a stroke. They found him sitting in his chair like he'd just fallen asleep. When I got the key, I figured I'd spend a weekend out there cleaning it up, maybe fix it up as a getaway. I went alone, but I wish I hadn't. It's about 12 miles down a forest road off Highway 68, right past a pull-off marked Bald River Ridge. I got there around noon. The place looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Boards warped, moss on the roof, a pile of firewood still under the tarp. Inside was what you'd expect: dust, spider webs, the smell of old wood smoke. But one thing stood out right away. The walls in the back room were painted solid gray, not like a normal coat of paint, thick, uneven, and covering every inch, even the windows. The floorboards in there were different too, newer. I figured my uncle had repurposed it or sealed it off for storage. On the table was a small tape recorder, the kind that runs on AA batteries. I hit play. At first, just static. Then his voice: "If you're hearing this, don't open the floor. It knows when it's seen." I immediately stopped the tape. That night, I started a fire in the stove and made some canned soup. Around 11 p.m., I heard a sound from the gray room, a dull thud, like something dropped from inside the wall. I told myself it was wood settling, but then it happened again, heavier. I opened the gray door just a crack. Cold air came out, colder than outside. It smelled like wet metal. The flashlight beam hit the floorboards, and I saw one of them was slightly raised, like it had warped up. I shut the door, locked it, and sat up all night. Morning felt normal again. I convinced myself this was just a bad joke, or I'm just imagining some of this. So, I pulled up the loose board to check for mold or animals underneath. There was a gap about 4 feet wide, perfectly cut into the earth below. Not natural. A smooth tunnel, walls covered in the same gray coating as the room. I leaned over with the flashlight. The beam went down maybe 10 feet before the light dimmed. Something moved down there. Just a ripple of motion, like a shadow turning. Then I heard my name whispered. Not loud, but close. I dropped the light and backed away. The whisper came again, this time from the corner of the room, like it had moved. I nailed the floorboard back down and left the cabin for the day. I drove into town, tried to find someone who knew my uncle. The man at the hardware store said everyone around here thought he'd gone crazy. He'd come into town once a month for supplies, always bought gray paint and caulk. Said he was keeping it sealed. When I got back that evening, I noticed footprints around the cabin. Bare feet, large, with long, narrow toes. They led from the back door to the well and then stopped. The door was open. Inside, the gray room door stood wide. The floorboard I'd nailed was up again. There were handprints on the walls, 5 fingers each, smeared gray like they'd come from inside the paint. That night I sat in the main room with my uncle's shotgun. No light except the fire. Around 2 a.m., I heard the floor creak in the gray room. Not a thud this time. Slow steps. The air turned cold. The fire hissed like it was choking. Then the gray door opened. Something crawled out, tall, thin, and coated in the same gray paint, dripping like it was fresh. Its head was long and smooth, no hair, no nose, just slits where eyes should have been. It stood in the doorway, twitching. The smell was so strong I gagged, like wet plaster and rot. I fired the shotgun. It fell backward into the gray room. When I looked again, nothing was there, just the hole open and the paint still dripping down the walls. I packed what I could and drove back to Knoxville before sunrise, called the county sheriff. They went out to inspect, said the cabin was empty, said there was no gray paint on the walls, just bare wood, no hole either. I know what I saw. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Now, every night, I hear scratching in my house under the floorboards, and I haven't slept in days. I think I might have brought something evil back with me. I need to know if anyone else has ever had an experience like this. Please let me know in the comments. And so, another strange encounter fades away. A trick of the mind, or something far more unsettling. That's for you to decide. Thank you so much for watching my stories. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support is what keeps this channel going.